Welcome to Biztech SME Show, where we feature SMEs, both small and large, sharing their entrepreneurial journeys and also imparting the lessons that they have learned. Now, today's featured company is Rentwise, a leading provider of green IT infrastructure solutions with a unique IT rental acquisition option, offering end-to-end IT managed services, and they are based in Malaysia as well as in Singapore. Our guest today is Leanne, the founder and CEO of Rentwise. Now, welcome to the show, Leanne.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Now, Leanne, let's start by you giving us an overview of Rentwise and how you started this business.
Rentwise started about 20 years ago. In August this year, we'll be 20 years old. I came from a company that was doing something similar, but it was an international company based in the UK. And they had a local joint venture in Malaysia, in which I was attached to. So after a couple of years there, they decided to spin off the joint venture. And I guess it was the right time, right place for me. I decided, since I was in business development, to come out and start up on our own. And that's how it started.
And tell us exactly what you do.
Rentwise is first and foremost an IT remanufacturer. Okay, it's called Rentwise because how we then sell, or how do we deploy the machines that we manufacture, is through a rental program. That's the core business today, although we do some selling to the SME, but the main way we deploy our machines to the market and we support the machines is through a rental program.
Okay, so this rental program, or if it's a rental / leasing program, I guess you remanufacture servers and PCs, I would assume.
Yes, a lot of it are PCs and what we call endpoints. So these are, desktops, these are laptops, notebooks, workstations. We do some servers as well. Now, we don't only provide remanufactured infrastructures, we also do new infrastructures. So in things like servers, where there's a longer usage life and there's a lot more robustness needed. So we tend to do new servers there.
When you started this business 20 years ago, and you were age 24 at that time, how did you fund the business?
Well, it started off with family funds. So I raised funds from family members. And about probably 18 months later, we attracted some VC investment. Okay. So we had some VCs come in. We had a VC come in. They were with us for 2 years. And then we attracted an angel investor who is still with us today. So the majority of the funding today comes from an angel investor. And we also work with, like any other business, we have facilities with the banks. We work with some Japanese funders, and we have a combination of funding sources.
Okay, so is that VCs and angel investors still with you today?
The VC exited, the angel investor took over, and he's still with us today, yes.
Leanne, what have been your challenges in growing this business over the last 20 years?
I think first things first, I still tell people today, we were 15 years too early in the region we are in. If you look at the European countries, if you look at the US, businesses like ours have boomed, have done really, really very well. A lot of regulatory support there. Now, in this part of the world, in ASEAN specifically, I think it's still very new. People are now starting to realize the benefits of what a business like ours does. And we've only really seen, good traction in the past 3 to 4 years. Before that, it was organic growth. Right. So today we're seeing more and more interest in what we do. And we know now is about the right time. The pandemic has also, given us a boost in the business. So yeah, I think today, in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a lot more growth.
Why has the pandemic given you a boost?
If you understand what's happening today in not only IT, but in even the semiconductor space, there's a shortage of parts, there's a shortage of equipment. Yes. So a lot of companies, a lot of individuals are looking for alternative solutions. They're turning to remanufactured computers, and remanufactured computers specifically have a much longer usage life. And I think that's where the interest is coming from, that they need devices, they need mobility. Kids need devices today, people working from home need devices today, and that's where it's coming from.
So Leanne, I'm going to drill down and ask you about some of the processes and benefits of remanufacturing. How long does it take to remanufacture a laptop or a desktop, for example?
Okay, before we can start the remanufacturing process, it needs to go through what we call a new product introduction R&D process. Now, what we do is we only deal with business class equipment. And before we start the remanufacturing process, it has to go through an end-to-end, we have to look at whether the product is suitable. Do we see any inherent problems in the process, in the product? We start the R&D process 6 months before we deploy the model. We test it internally. We have clients that are our test beds as well. And once the product has passed, all our quality checks, then the remanufacturing process itself takes about 2 weeks.
Okay.
End
Now,
to end.
where do you get your feedstock from? So do you get it from people like Dell, HP, IBM, and so forth, who then basically after they've taken their technology refresh program, they've maybe the customer has used the server or the laptop or the PC for 3 years, you're the next home for these machines.
We work with some OEMs. We also work with a lot of large corporates, people that have very short technology turns. They use machines for 2 to 3 years on projects. And generally, at the end of that 3-year period, it comes back to us. So it's a combination. It's a combination of the OEM channel. It's a combination of large corporates, because we also have our own new leasing channels, new equipment leasing channels. So the equipment comes back and it gets repurposed for another round.
And so obviously, you now, having done this for 20 years, you've got that whole remanufacturing thing down to a pack in terms of a process. Is it a very labor-intensive process?
It's a combination. We have a lot of systems, because what's very important is traceability. So it's a combination of having robust systems as well as technically skilled people in place. Yeah, it's not really only manual. It's a combination of things.
Typically, right, with these remanufactured PCs and laptops, how much of an extended life do they have compared to a brand new machine?
Okay, good question. We are able to get 3 cycles out of a machine. So the first cycle is when it's new, and that's about 3 to 4 years. Then it comes back in for what we call the first round of remanufacturing, and that's another 3 to 4 years. It goes out mainly into the corporate space, and then it's returned again for what we call the third round of remanufacturing. And these are the machines then that go to consumers, they go to schools, they go to school kids, people that don't need the latest and greatest.
Okay, so that's wonderful, because, and we're going to come to that in terms of social impact, because e-waste is a huge global problem. And by getting 3 cycles out of 1 machine, you basically reduce carbon footprint and also e-waste.
Definitely.
I ask you in terms of, obviously the benefits are very, very clear in terms of remanufacturing. So it is a reduction on the carbon footprint, cost savings, say, as you said, on the 3rd cycle in terms of the consumer side, they probably buy the machine outright. Am I correct?
That's right.
Okay, but in the 2nd cycle, you then rent or lease these out to corporations, whether it's SME or corporations itself. How much savings typically would a corporation make using your machines versus a brand new machine in terms of a lease model?
Okay, if you look at a total solution, because we don't only just put our hardware out, we support it, we maintain it, we manage it, and we manage the end-to-end life cycle. So we have scenarios where it's 30 to 40% savings, and it really comes down to the organization and how widespread they are, how many locations they have. So you can say on average it's 30 to 40%, sometimes it's higher.
So essentially, you are not providing, and that's a very important distinction, you're providing a service. You're not selling hardware.
That's right.
So if I'm an SME, I've got 10 users that need machines. You are literally my outsourced IT department. You take care of everything. I pay you a fee every month.
That's right. Depending on the size of the business, we can act as the full outsourced IT department. But for the larger clients that we have, who already have their own IT teams, then we become a hybrid solution to allow their IT teams to focus on things that are more core and more important for their business, for example, application support. And then we take away the mundane, very manual work of having to support IT equipment.
Can I ask you, in terms of your corporate clients, who are your main clients?
We are very diverse in clientele. We have people that are in construction, manufacturing, education, hospitality, even the medical side. It's very diverse. And typically it's people that understand that they don't need the latest and greatest. And what they want is they want to keep their IT team lean. They want to keep, a decent turn of technology so that they can look at upgrades every 3 to 4 years. So yeah, it's really down to people that want to be nimble and want to have a decent, up-to-date platform.
And so one of the key challenges which people don't realize is also the hardware, not just that, it's not about the hardware only, it's also about the software. Do you take care of that as well?
Yes, we do. The machines come with the latest operating systems. They have options to bundle in productivity suites, security suites. It's really down to what the client needs, and each client can be quite different.
Now, one of the things which is exciting, of course, is the ability, because of the lower cost of using remanufactured equipment, to bridge the digital divide. Because that is a big problem. COVID has identified a big gap between the haves and the have-nots in terms of technology access. How have you played a role as Rentwise in helping to bridge this digital divide?
I think even prior to COVID, we've had situations where there's a big digital divide. Example, we have public schools in Malaysia today, in which kids have to learn 5 to 1 in terms of a PC, sometimes even none. So one of our big initiatives, and we started this about 10 to 12 years ago, is to equip public schools. And we focus on those that have a high content of B40 students with functioning IT equipment, functioning labs, so that they can have a good student to PC ratio, and they can actually get hands-on when it comes to the IT learning. Yeah, so I think it's even before COVID. Now, of course, situation has escalated because of COVID, where now kids have to learn from home. So
Yes.
we've had a lot of requests. We've had a lot of people coming to us to ask us if we could supply laptops, notebooks basically, and we've been doing quite a bit of that work of late.
Walk us through a little bit how the competitive landscape has changed for this remanufacturing business over the last 20 years.
Surprisingly, we don't seem to have much competition yet where we are. We are by far, the largest, even though in terms of revenue size, we're still small as a business.
But okay, what sort of revenue do you do currently?
We're doing about 20 mil this year.
Okay.
And it's been between 17 to 20 mil in the last couple of years.
Okay.
Right. So we're relatively still small. However, it's a complex business. There's so many angles that you need to look at. And I think it's not an easy business to get into because it's very capital intensive as well. So we don't see much competition when it comes to remanufacturing per se. Right, but that's where we are. If you look to the advanced economies, you have businesses which are 100 times our size. So I think it's a matter of time that others would step in to the Malaysian market, to the Asian market, especially because now there's a lot more push to say, remanufactured products are fine. You don't always need the latest and greatest.
But Leanne, so one of the challenges is, so what you're saying is the big challenge is actually adoption. Because are you in a situation where you go out to clients and they're like, no, I don't want to use used equipment?
We used to be in that situation, not anymore. I think more and more people are understanding that there is no need for the latest and greatest, and they see that the manufactured platform works fine. I think a lot of it has got to do with regulatory support. The ability to scale comes down to the policies that the country has in regards to how e-waste is managed. And what we're trying to position is, a lot of times equipment is recycled, and recycling is the last step of the process you want to consider. You want to consider repurposing first. So a lot of our time today is spent with, the regulatory bodies, educating them on what we do and how they could look at policy making differently.
And so what do you think that the government needs to do to really open up this industry?
To start off with, I think they've got to understand what it's all about. I think the government today still doesn't have a good understanding of what remanufacturing is all about. E-waste seems to be a big problem, and e-waste is managed by recycling. Okay, so I think our journey today or our job today is a lot of education on why this business is good for the economy, is good for the community, is good for the environment, and it's good for the country.
Absolutely. Now, Leanne, you've taken this business over the last 20 years to a $20 million business. What are your expansion strategies moving forward to grow the
Okay,
business?
we want to do more work with the education sector. We
Mhm.
see that there's a need, a real need there, and we also want to do more work with our corporate clients in regards to supporting the education sector. So what we do today is we go out and we talk to companies that have a lot of IT equipment, a large IT user base, and we offer to buy back retired equipment from them, right? And we offer to buy back 80% of what they have, and in return, by recovering a much better value for them than scrapping it, we ask that they donate 20% to us, and these are then repositioned or repurposed to put into schools. Okay, so it's a
Fantastic.
combination of things. It's a full ecosystem that we're trying to build here.
Okay, that's fantastic. Now, in your 20-year journey, you learned a lot of lessons, Leanne. Could you share some of your insights with other entrepreneurs and business owners?
Okay, I think the first thing is that you need to have high energy level. Okay, you got to keep optimistic at all times because business is about up and downs. And it's you have to have a very positive mindset. You've got to have high energy. You got to keep optimistic. I think that's individually as an entrepreneur. And then the next thing you need to think about really is people. People are your key asset. And as you grow the business, you need to make sure you grow the people as well, because the people are the one that then help, support the systems, the processes. That is what is required to build the business. All right. So my two key focus areas would be, how I grow myself to keep going, and ensure that at the same time I have got a team that's coming up around us, around me, that is able to grow the business together with me.
Now, are there any plans to then take the business, for a trade sale or for an IPO or something like that?
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a few years. And we know at some point in time, we've got to consider either, a trade sale or an IPO. But we feel that with few years away still, we've got a lot more room to grow and a lot more things we want to build before we really sit down and have those, conversations. But it's something down the road.
Leanne, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on the SME show.
Thank you, Brian.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Leanne Uy, founder and CEO of Rentwise, on Biztech SME Show. This video will be on our Facebook and LinkedIn site, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please subscribe and like our various platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in.